Good afternoon, you're watching ZTN News Blitz. I'm Itai Mutiniri. Let's take a look at our top stories. COVID-19 shuts Zimbabwe Supreme and Constitutional Court. 20 Bari families living outside after fire accident. SA court clears Ramaphosa of CR17 campaign fraud. And in sports, Taylor upbeat ahead of Tigers series. Zimbabwe Supreme, Constitutional and Labour courts have been closed after some members of staff tested positive for COVID-19. The closure of the courts comes barely a week after 11 other magistrates and High Court houses across the country were closed under similar circumstances. In a statement, the Judicial Service Commission said the 3 courts will be open on Monday, 5 July, and mechanisms have been put in place to ensure that the closure will not result in any backlog of cases. Secretary of the Judicial Service Commission, Walter Chikwana, told ZTN that they are making efforts to decongest workplaces as part of efforts to curb the spread of the virus.
The first one is to reduce the number of staff who are reporting of duty to around 40%. And the second one is that we are no longer allowing members of the public to enter into our courthouses unless if you are a legal practitioner or you are a litigant or a witness. I don't anticipate any rise in backlogs at the courts that we have closed because the closure is only for a few days, and we are putting in some measures to ensure that those very few cases that would have failed to kick off will be dealt with as soon as the courthouses are open.
Close to 20 families whose apartments were gutted by fire yesterday in Bari, Harare, spent last night in the open, some with no blankets or warm clothes. 14 apartments at Bari Flats were destroyed by an inferno which broke out around 4 p.m. Our correspondent Munashe Mkatlera is on standby in Mbare. Munashe, what is the situation like for the affected families?
Good afternoon, Itai. Around this time yesterday, close to 20 families called these apartments home. But little did they know that they would spend the night homeless. Around 4 p.m. yesterday, a fire broke out here at Bari Flats in Bari. No casualties were recorded, but the affected families, some of the affected families rather, had to spend the cold night on pavements. It is reported that the fire started in this apartment building right next to me, where it is said that the fire was caused by a child that was playing with a candle. Now, the families share these apartments, and according to witnesses, the inferno was caused as it spread because they share these apartments using curtains and wooden boards. Now, earlier, we spoke to some of the affected families, and this is what they had to say.
Nishahidi yatsvayi nechikafu nemagumbezi nehembe dzingori pamiri ndidzo dzidzicheta hakuna dzimwe hembe. Ndabuda panze ndikuona mwana ari kudenza kuti mumba medu muri kubvira mumba muri kubvira. Ndichabuda mumba muno muchienda nodongora ndimo muri kubvira. Ndaona mumba zvika muchibvira singaiti. Ndadzika ndichimhanya ndatora vana vangu vari pamusuwo ndichivabudisa panze kuti ndikwanise kudenza vanhu vangu vari panze. Vakomana vanozokwanisa kuti vadzima moto kuti mai mane hutsi hwaibuda mukati umu. Ende hutsi hwacho wanga wakaipa kuti waitokwadzana navanhu.
Ndakatenga mishinzi yangu yekucheka huswa. Ndofunga ndo imwe yamuri kuona iri pamusoro apa iyi. Saka ndaibatsira community kucheka huswa surrounding. Saka iwo yaita se yatsva.
Namba dze-fire brigade ndandinadzo. Ndichifona kudaro namba dzaingoringa hapana kana munhu aidaira. Kupedzera ndazonosvika mumapurisa kwenda.
The price of a Zupco bus fare in Zimbabwe has tripled in the past 12 months. At this time last year, a distance of 20 kilometers cost commuters at least 16 Zimbabwe dollars, which shot up to $30 in January 2021. The same distance now costs $60. For a distance of between 21 to 30 kilometers, it cost $24 in August last year, with the fares rising to $45. The latest fares, which came into effect today, will see commuters paying 90 Zimbabwe dollars for distances between 21 and 30 kilometers. For those who commute longer distances, which range from 31 to 40 kilometers, they are now paying $110. Many have argued that Zupco is now running full commercial operations, but Chief Executive Evaristo Madangwa says the increases are meant to cover operational costs.
Okay, you can imagine our prices have not been increased for a long time, and costs have been going up. Okay, so it's an effort of trying to make sure that we remain providing service at an affordable price. Our prices, they still remain very competitive, even at that rate that I say. And they are still competitive, and we are not commercializing our business as well. Ours is service delivery.
A traffic police officer was crushed to death by a Zupco bus at a roadblock in Zimbabwe's second largest city, Bulawayo, on Thursday. The bus dragged the female cop for about 30 meters and broke her into pieces. The accident happened along the City Kami Road near the flyover where the cops were manning a roadblock. The police roadblock was targeting vehicles moving towards the city center, while the accident occurred on the road with vehicles going towards the western suburbs. National Police spokesperson Assistant Commissioner Paul Nyati confirmed the accident but could not give further details. Teenagers from Marondera, a town located 72 kilometers east of Harare, have been arrested for allegedly assaulting a 73-year-old man over results of a football match. Anyway, Pondo, aged 18, and Keith Matanewa, 19, accused Langton Mandivira of refusing to tell them results of a Euro 2020 football match he had watched. The duo are being charged with murder after Mandivira, who had been rushed to Parinyatwa Group of Hospitals in Harare, succumbed to injuries sustained from the assault. Mashonaland East Provincial Police spokesperson Inspector Simon Chazovachi confirmed the incident.
ZTN Marondera Rural is investigating a murder case in which a 73-year-old man was allegedly murdered by two teenagers while he was coming from Karimba School to watch a soccer match. Brief circumstances suggest that on 13 June 2021, at around 1800 hours, Langton Mandibvira, now deceased. According to the report received, the two confronted Langton Mandibvira, asking him what had happened at the soccer match, and the now deceased kept quiet and proceeded with his journey. It is alleged this did not go down well with the suspects, who then reportedly started to assault the now deceased with fists, booted feet, and unknown object. It is reported that they left the now deceased lying unconscious and fled.
The economic and social disruption caused by the COVID-19 pandemic has been devastating. Tens of millions of people are at risk of falling into extreme poverty. While the number of undernourished people is currently estimated at nearly 690 million, millions of enterprises face an existential threat. Nearly half of the world's 3.3 billion global workforce are at risk of losing their livelihoods. Informal economy workers are particularly vulnerable because of the majority lack of social protection and access to quality health care and have lost access to productive assets. There is also an interesting dynamic to the whole issue. A handful of cabinet ministers who presided over health ministries are now jobless. They were found with their hands in the cookie jar. Owen Kaura tells us more in the next report.
2021, much like 2020, has been a tough year. Not only for us, but political leaders across the globe. Governments around the world have faced flack over their inadequate handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Health ministers in Ecuador, Iraq, Jordan, Peru, Mongolia, Paraguay, Slovakia were also left jobless due to a number of irregularities. While Brazilians have come out on the streets to protest against Prime Minister Bolsonaro, health ministers across the world have had to face the axe for the mishandling of COVID-19 in their countries. Here, we list 13 countries where the health ministers had to resign due to COVID-19 mishandling. We move to Austria, where Rudolf Anschober submitted his resignation on April 13 after he said he was overworked due to the COVID-19 situation in the country and felt that the country needed a fitter person for the role. Anshoba said he was advised the same by his doctors. Back to South America. In Argentina, Health Minister Gines Gonzalez Garcia submitted his resignation in February this year after irregularities appeared in the country's vaccination program, and it was found that people have been using their clout to jump the queue. In the UK, Health Minister Matt Hancock resigned for breaching social distancing rules with an aide he was having an affair with. He was accused of failing to respect his hands, mouth and nose. In neighboring South Africa, Zweli Mkhize, the health minister, is on special leave probe into the irregular awarding of the 150 million rand COVID-19 communications tender to his long-term associates, Digital Vibes. Back home, in July last year, Obadiah Moyo was relieved of his duties. He is facing criminal charges over a procurement deal for overpriced medical supplies that were eventually killed on Treasury's instructions. For ZTN, I'm Owen Kaura.
Afro-jazz artist Nyabinde has released a single track titled Daira. Nyabinde says the song that was released on Wednesday is the first of many to come this year. To date, he has 2 albums, Kushanda, released in 2018, and Basa Ibasa in 2020. We spoke to Nyabinde.
The song Daira is a single, the first of this year. I haven't released anything this year, but the song talks about 2 guys who are colleagues, but the one is asking a question that why is it that you're always there when things are bad, but when things are good, you're nowhere to be found. So it's just an encouragement for some of our guys to say, let's be all-weather friends. Because, you know, with the coming of the COVID-19 pandemic, sometimes you are in need and I am okay. We need to cushion each other almost every day. There are no visuals, but we're working on the visuals. Maybe by end of July, we'll be dropping the video for Daira. We're also working on other tracks to release this year, because last year I released an album, but this year I chose to take a different route and release singles, so that at least people find time to digest our songs one by one.
We move to South Africa, where South Africa's Constitutional Court has found that the public protector's finding that President Cyril Ramaphosa sought to enrich himself and family with the donations made to his 2017 ANC presidency campaign does not hold water, as both the president and his son did not know about the donation. The court also said the public protector was wrong in fact and law in finding that Ramaphosa had lied to Parliament on the 500,000 rand donation to the CR17 campaign. Now, more than 100 civilians abducted by militants in Mozambique's Cabo Delgado province have been rescued. This is according to the country's military. Army Commander Cristovao Chume said those rescued were mainly women and children, and they would be handed over to the authorities for social support. The commander said militants were still active in Palma district, although the security of the area was considered to be under control. A prototype mask developed by engineers at MIT and Harvard University can detect whether the wearer has a COVID-19 infection within 90 minutes. Professor James Collins of MIT highlighted that, as well as detecting viral and bacterial compounds, the freeze-dried sensors could detect toxic chemicals such as nerve toxins. The mask includes a small reservoir of water that is released when a wearer is ready to perform a test at the push of a button. We move on to sport, where Bangladesh will face a familiar nemesis when they take on Zimbabwe in a one-off test next week. In Brendan Taylor, Zimbabwe has a player who knows how to torment the Tigers. The last time Bangladesh toured Zimbabwe in 2013, they found Taylor in fantastic form. He scored back-to-back centuries as Zimbabwe romped to a 335-run first test win at Harare Sports Club. 8 years later, another reunion is set, and Taylor expects another successful series.
It was a time where we probably played our best test match that I've ever been a part of. We're clinical in all 3 departments. On a wicket that sort of seemed around for day 1, day 2, and then got a little bit better to bat on. So we're trying to replicate that again by being out here on a wicket that's probably a little bit slower, but we're all getting very valuable stuff and time put in. I mean, there's not a lot of time left, but I'm really looking forward to home conditions. You know, that's something that we generally do thrive on.
Still with cricket, one Kudzai Mutiti has an unquenchable drive for junior cricket development. He started with volunteer coaching at Marondera High, but now has developed into an academy owner. The 28-year-old has established a Hokima Cricket Academy in his hometown of Marondera. During his playing days, Mutiti was in junior cricket with Zimbabwe internationals Tarisai Msakanda, Ryan Burl and William Mashinge. We spoke to Mutiti.
So basically the vision of the academy is to set the standard of excellence for sport by providing first-class coaching, professional instruction and life skills. Personally, I believe that sport is one of the greatest training grounds for life. And if the true values of sport are properly modeled and taught to the kids, then this will give the kids the right foundation that they need for them to be successful in life, both on and off the field of play. The system that we have in the country only focuses on the skill aspect of sport, but I believe it's not enough to make a complete sports person. So we do this by having people that have played at the highest level to come and interact with the kids. Kids get to be told what it takes to play at the highest level.
Now, in a Chibuku Super Cup tie played at the National Sports Stadium today, it ended Dynamo's 1, Rentals 0. Today, the 1st of July, marks exactly 22 years after the death of one of the country's founding fathers, Dr. Joshua Nkomo Chibwe-Chireza, as he was also known. The late vice president succumbed to prostate cancer at the age of 82. Just over 2 decades after his death, Dr. Nkomo remains an inspiration to many, and his legacy will remain embedded in the minds of both old and young generations whose lives he directly and indirectly gladdened. President Emmerson Mnangagwa recently paid tribute to Father Zimbabwe and revealed his last message.
The message which he left us, which we would also wish to leave the nation of Zimbabwe, is unity, love and harmony. Above all these is our land. He said thousands and thousands of our young sons and daughters perished because we wanted our land to unite with its people, and the people unite with their land. That was the message. I remember when he was feeling very ill, making this statement to the late President Mugabe that if I go, comrade, I want unity, keep our land, give it to our people. That was the message. It was valid then, it is valid today, it will be valid in future. That's how we must remember our founding father, Joshua Nkomo. Thank you.
That's all we had for you on ZTN News Blitz. We now leave you watching some of Father Zimbabwe's lasting memories. Thank you for watching.